Remember, in the course of discussing movies, the host will spoil plots. You've been warned. Listen to their screams. Greetings, ghouls and creeps, and welcome to Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dave. I'm joined as always by the other host, Ike. Ike, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I cannot complain. You know, I sometimes have my complaints, but I'm doing pretty good today. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, me too. It's been extraordinarily hot, and
That's for sure.
that that's something. Even though I don't go out very often, it's still hot. I still feel it, but that's okay because right now it's not too bad and it's kind of rainy, so we're good right now. So I'm all's well. And we're here getting ready to talk horror. Today, we are going to do an Insidious franchise review. We're going to discuss all four of the movies and give our ranking of our favorites from 4 to 1. That is setting up next week as we will be reviewing the new Insidious The Red Door that comes out on July 7th. But before we get into all that, we have lots of other things to discuss. First of all, special thanks to our wives, Monica and Kayla, for everything they do and all the help they provide to us. So, Ike, before we get to our weekly segment, did you watch anything this week?
I sure did. Let's see. First of all, I was actually going to go to the movies this last weekend, but I remembered that it was like 4th of July weekend, so I decided not to because it was going to be super crazy. I wasn't going to go see a horror movie. I was going to go see the Spider-Man movie, but I just want to throw that out there that I want to see that movie very badly, so I'm manifesting it. Maybe it'll happen. But outside of that, with the holiday and everything else, I did have some downtime, so I got to watch a couple of movies that have been kind of on the back burner, if you will. First and foremost, I watched a movie called Speak No Evil on Shudder. It is a foreign film. It is mostly in English. It's actually everybody in the film speaks English, but there are some subtitled sections where they're, I think, speaking Dutch. But it's really great. Honestly, it's probably one of the better horror movies I've seen on Shudder. It was extraordinarily good. It's a bit of a slow burn, but you get about halfway into the movie. I mean, you're enthralled the entire time, but about halfway is when things start getting weird. I watched a movie on Prime called Butterfly Kisses. It's a sort of a found footage film, but it's basically a found footage film about a guy who is putting together footage he found of a school project that turned bad. So it's kind of like a weird, like, what's the word? Inception-esque found footage movie. It was pretty good. And then, of course, I actually watched The Last Shift, which recently got a remake called, I cannot remember now, Malum. It's called Malum. Last Shift is the original. Pretty good movie. My wife enjoyed it. She thought it was pretty cool. And then last but certainly not least, I actually started a show on Netflix called Devil in Ohio. This is a series, limited series, I think is what they call it on Netflix when it's got only one season. I think it pretty much ties itself up, I'm going to guess. But basically, it's about a girl who escaped from a cult and is basically adopted into a family or fostered into a family, and some weird shit starts happening. So it's good so far. I have not finished it, but that's all that I watched this week.
Interesting. Well, let's see. What did I watch? I watched Poltergeist 1, 2, and 3. Somehow I got on that. I don't know how I got on that kick. I just did. They're pretty good. The first one, I like the first one. They get progressively worse to me, as often happens in franchises. The first one's good. I get that it's not for everybody. It's not a high action type thing, but it's pretty good. 2's a little less, 3 is a little less, but I think they're all pretty decent, and they're all fun. It's horrible to watch those and think what happened to that actress though, and how she died before even completing the third, and because she was really good in them, and I think she had a bright future. And then the only other thing I watched was the Run Rabbit Run, the new movie that's on Netflix that just came out like a week or so ago. And it was really, really good. I was pleasantly surprised at first when it started going. I was like, I don't know about this. I'm not sure what this is. And it's not that it was confusing. It just seemed kind of blah. And then,
Right.
man, it started. They kind of threw something else in there, and I was like, ooh. And then they wrapped it up pretty strong. I enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised. I just know I'd heard a lot about it coming out and everything. And there's that creepy picture that's in all the promo stuff of the little girl wearing the homemade rabbit mask that she made. And I thought, man, that's kind of creepy. Kids are always creepy, so let's watch that. And it did not disappoint. And the little girl was very, very good in it. And so very happy with that. Highly suggest everybody go out and watch Run Rabbit Run on Netflix. It's pretty good. So then that we've wrapped up what we've watched and all the little housekeeping that we opened the show with, let's get to our weekly segment. Horror Hot Take. This week we're back around the bend and we are back to Horror Hot Take. This is where it's typically Isaac because he seems to have a mind full of these things ready to roll. So, and I don't, I don't give too much thought to him overall. But where one of us gives a hot take, or what is potentially a hot take on a horror topic, movie, etc. So, Ike, do you have one primed up for us and ready to go?
I do. And
all right, lay it on us.
I think I say this every week, but I'm again, I'm not super sure if this is actually a hot take, but it's just something I feel very passionately about. But to lay a little groundwork here, before I jump into the hot take, I think that a lot of people in this world, not just in horror movies, but a lot of people in this world, they rely very heavily on like other people telling them like what they should or shouldn't like, right? There's entire industries built around basically like somebody else telling you, the consumer, what you should or should not like. Even at a young age, I have always disliked those industries, whether it was for food reviews, whether it was for movie reviews, music reviews, it doesn't matter. I hate the concept of a review. I hate the concept of there being these like multi-million-dollar industries that are entirely built around like reviewing something and then telling you, the consumer, whether or not you should or shouldn't watch it, right?
I thought that was pretty funny there because you're like, I hate reviews. Like, oh, we're a movie review podcast. Then you said multi-million dollars. Like, we're out.
Right. It's a little bit different when you have like podcasts, because there are a lot of great podcasts that talk about these movies, and I like to think that as content creators, we like to keep things pretty neutral. We'll never tell you not to watch a movie. And that's the first thing I always tell people about the podcast is I'm never going to tell you not to watch a movie. Even the worst movies that I've seen, I'm not going to tell you not to watch it, unless of course the movie's like disgusting or like rancid or something like that. But even then, I'm going to tell you, make your own opinion. But I don't like.
And we have no
Go ahead.
skin in the game. We're not
Exactly.
getting paid anything. We're not getting any kickback. We have no large scale connection to any of this either. So it makes no difference to us what you watch because it doesn't affect us day to day.
Exactly. So I think that with that groundwork being said, my potentially horror movie hot take is that I truly believe that horror movies are ruined by the fans. I think even the best horror movies are ruined by the fans because people, and it's both sides. It's not just the people who say movies are bad or movies are good. I think that horror movies are like this very eclectic genre where a lot of these movies, they have a very broad but also narrow audience, right? It checks off a lot of boxes. A lot of horror movies can check off a lot of boxes, but those boxes are very niche. And I think a lot of time when you watch these horror movies, there are very certainly people who are going to really enjoy movies, but there's going to be an even larger, I would probably almost say majority, that are not going to like these movies. And I think that the industry that is around like movie reviews has painted horror movies as sort of like a lesser genre. And so like not only do you have infighting within like the horror movie community, right? Because everybody has their opinions on everything, right? Everybody's got an opinion, and opinion's like an asshole, and they mostly stink. So it's like you have this infighting within the industry, but also the industry is being pounded by, I would say, most other like entities within the entertainment realm. Because generally speaking, horror movies are, and it's not as bad now as it used to be, but horror movies are generally looked down upon as like lesser film. So it's like you already have like somebody pummeling down on you because you're like, oh yeah, well horror movies aren't really that good, and then you also have all the fighting within it. So I guess my hot take is that the fans really are what like kill horror movies. You know what I mean? The arguing, the infighting, and I think that people just generally just can't enjoy movies anymore. And I don't know if it's just because of like the mass production of movies, which could be part of it. But I think a lot of it has to do with people just not being able to like just shut their brain off and just enjoy a movie for a movie. They have to find the good and the bad, right? Which, we can do, of course, but I still enjoy pretty much every movie I watch. And, me and Dave have a mutual friend. He goes by Salsa Shark online. Salsa Shark's very much of the opinion that all movies are either objectively good or objectively bad. And I see it in a much broader scope of all movies are good for the most part. There are just some things that I prefer or not prefer within those movies. So I guess that's my hot take, is that basically just enjoy movies. You know what I mean? You're killing the movie industry by creating this infighting, and I think that it's just very detrimental to everybody.
Yeah, I don't think this is unique to horror movies. I think it applies to
Right.
pretty much any genre movie because you do not get more infighting and more potentially toxic fans than in say like the Star Wars universe and
Right.
and things like that. And the thing is the the thing there's I think there's lots of elements to play it with this. I think number one, there's so much out there in the market that everybody you can't consume everything. So everybody's
Right.
time is so valuable. So there's this full court marketing press on all the time to get you to spend your limited time and limited dollars on X product or X whatever it is. So you have the corporate side of it who is doing everything they can to drag you into theirs. And then yes, I don't know if it's a general rule because I have met some absolutely fantastic fans in every genre, and there are
Right.
lots of people who who are great. But yes, there are, and I believe this is for pretty much any passion uh, thing out there, right? Whether it's collecting, whatever it is, and even when you break it down into the subgenres, there's always toxic fans. There's always gatekeeping fans.
Yep.
There's always fans who give the bad image um, for everybody else. And I'm not talking in no way am I talking like a physical appearance or anything like that. I'm talking purely based on attitude and behavior. And I have me specifically and talking horror specifically, because I have lots of genres that I like of different things. But speaking horror specific, I have very definitive things that I like more than others within
Right.
horror. There are styles I like a lot more. There are time periods even that I tend to like more. There's actors or actresses that I like more. There's writers and producers. There's all kinds of things that can trigger things that I like more. But even at that, I understand that there's that what I like is not what everybody likes, and if we all like the same thing, it'd be a real bland world. So I don't
It would
I
be.
don't care. I don't care. I mean, I have things that I passionately hate in this world, right? Artistic wise, but I have I have not a care in the world if somebody else loves that as much as I hate it because I don't care, and I don't care if somebody hates something that I love as much, equally as much as my love is, because it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't impact my like for it. And I can go watch a movie and come out of it thinking, that wasn't my greatest, my best use of my time. That wasn't the greatest movie I've ever seen. But oh well, whatever. I very easily can just chalk it up as okay, well, it's done though. It is what it
Right.
is. Who cares? And but I especially with theater going, there's more to it than just the movie for me. I like the experience, right? The going to the theater and sitting in there in the darkened room, and it triggers a lot of memories and nostalgia for me too. So there's lots more than just the movie involved in that. That even if it's a movie I didn't care for, there was still the act and the experience of going and seeing it that was fun. And I can typically find something within pretty much any movie that I watch that I liked, whether it be like we've said before, and I know recently um, we talked about Cannibal Cabin as being one of those
Right.
movies that we were pretty harsh on, and that I really couldn't find a redeeming quality. That's very rare for me. That even a movie I don't like, I can't look at it and say, man, I didn't like that movie, but this person was pretty good in it, or that one line was pretty clever, or that one effect or one kill was pretty cool, or hey, I liked the soundtrack or that one song. There's usually at least some little thing that I like, and I'm quite content and comfortable that I can hang my hat on that and say good enough for me, whatever,
Yeah.
because it's not a life or death thing, right? It's my life will go on just the same whether I love or hate a movie, either one. So why do I need to spend time, you know, arguing and bashing it? Now I can debate people on whether a movie, in my eyes, is good or bad, but in the end, there's too many people that confuse opinion for fact. And while
Right.
if we debate a movie, we're just debating opinions. There's neither one, neither person's right or wrong. It's just two opinions, and you're probably not going to convince the other person. But sometimes it's fun just to banter, right? And that's what it is. And as long as nobody takes it personally, um, all's good. But the online world has made it. And don't trust me, I love the online world, and I always have. I've always been, kind of, I've appreciated technology and the advancements, but it makes it easy for people to hide and throw out opinions or to troll or stir a pot and think it's funny. And and again, I don't think this is, not to beat a dead horse. I know we're going a little long on this here, but it's not. I don't think it's distinct to horror. I think it's just
No.
it's pretty much anything that people are passionate about. It's there. It does not matter. And maybe my skin's a little thicker too, because I grew up as a professional wrestling fan during a time period when people looked down upon that. So you kind of hit it to agree. I grew up during a time when I was a comic book fan, and people looked down upon that. So you hit it, for people. So just to be in a day and age when I can go to a comic book movie and hey, it's making lots of money and it's pretty cool. And that's, hey, I'm good with that, because once upon a time, you didn't go around telling people you liked comic books. It wasn't the hip thing to do. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, I mean, toxic fans suck, and people should just
Yeah.
you know, you can have opinions, but they are your opinions, and your opinion's not any more valuable than someone else's opinion. And the dollar you spend is equal to the dollar that somebody else spends. So, um, none of us are more important or better in this whole scheme. So, like what you like, and quit being a dick about it. So,
Hey, there you go. There you go. I was say it's hard to articulate that kind of a thought, but basically, like exactly what you said, it boils down to the dollar I spend is the same as your dollar. Don't be a dick about it.
yep, yep. So, and if if there's a movie that you're, or whatever it is that you're extraordinarily passionate about, then sure, spend a whole lot of money and support that. More power to you. I'm cool with that, because I want everybody that has a creative passion out there. I want them all to succeed. I don't care if I like them or not. I like the thought of people pursuing their creative passions and their creative outlets, and being successful at it, and whether I like it or not. That's a cool thing to have out there. So
Yeah. Well, and that's part of, kind of part of our conversation. You mentioned Cannibal Cabin. While we may have not liked the movie, and while we may have certainly thrown some things out there that were not so great, you know, I would still say I would encourage those filmmakers to make another movie. You know what I mean? I would
Yeah.
encourage the people within that film that acted in it to act in other movies, because this could just be a launching pad. You know what I mean? And that's the thing too, is that a lot of people don't realize is that you have these movies that maybe you hate. Maybe this is this person's first ever like directorial debut or acting debut. It could be a lot of things. Obviously, you know, there are some things that, you know, like I said, we didn't care about the movie, but we would never sit here and like, because there are so many people online who be like, oh, you should stop making movies. This is the worst shit I've ever seen in my life, blah, blah. I'd never tell somebody that. I'd be like, okay, this wasn't my favorite, but I want to see what you have next. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a weird thing because, you know, I'll be absolutely frank. I hated Cannibal Cabin. I did not like it at all, but I don't care, right? Because the fact that I hate it, that doesn't matter to anybody, right?
yeah.
And if that movie made $100 million and suddenly was the biggest thing in the world, okay, that's cool. I still don't like it, but hey, good for them. I'm glad they succeeded. But the bottom line is, if they make a Cannibal Cabin 2, unless I'm in a position where we have to review it or something, I'm probably not going to seek it out and watch it because I didn't like the first one. But you know what? If someone likes that movie and they make a Cannibal Cabin 2, well, good for those people, right? They get another one. That's cool. It doesn't change my trajectory any. So it's like, it's, I don't know. To me, it's so unimportant that, you know,
Right.
we could, yeah, people can like what they like. They can hate what they hate. It doesn't matter. And you know, it's weird to me, the people that don't want something to succeed, because it really has, I don't know. I feel like it has little impact on them. You know, I understand that if there's
Exactly.
something you really, really like, wanting it to succeed so that you can get more of it. I get that. But it's like, why do people care if something else succeeds? Is that taking away from something that, I mean, do they think there's a set amount of dollars out there that, oh, because this movie did so well, sorry, we can't. No, that's not the way it works. I mean, there's more platforms and services and production companies than ever before out there. And, you know, there's a lot of projects getting made. So I don't know. It's
Yep.
odd to me. Some people
It
just have
is.
destructive personalities, I think, and it's odd. So,
Absolutely.
all right, well, there you go. That, I guess, that spun into a longer discussion than what we thought. So, but yeah, so let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll have some upcoming birthdays, movie anniversaries, and releases. Make sure you subscribe to Listen to Their Screams on your favorite podcast platform. Also, make sure you look us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, and Slasher. All you have to do is look up Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2, and Screams, and you can find us there. Also, make sure you go and buy yourself a Listen to Their Screams t-shirt. You can find all of our shirts at tinyurl.com/Screams Shirts.
And we are back with the news. Spread the news. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed, first of all, our little rant there. That definitely went longer than we thought it would. But hey, you get talking about something, you feel very passionate about it, and it just rolls. So
Yep.
can't stop the creative juices. So let's talk about some birthdays. We have some, again, I don't know what it is with like this midsummer time, but like last month was good, May was even good. So we have some banger birthdays this week. So July 6th, 1927, we have Janet Leigh, Psycho. Of course, she's also Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, but Janet Leigh is obviously iconic. You know, she was in Psycho, she was in Halloween H2O. I mean, just incredible actress, legendary. I mean, what more can you say?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I love Psycho, so that's alone is enough. But you know, she deserves a plaque on a wall somewhere for giving us Jamie Lee Curtis. So
Amen to that. And then we also have another wonderful actress, Shelley Duvall from The Shining, July 7th, 1949. If I remember correctly, did we recently lose Shelley Duvall? Did you recently pass, or am I thinking of somebody
mm,
else?
no, I don't think so. I could be wrong. I'll look into that, but as you go on. But no, I think she's still alive. She just doesn't really do
Really?
much. You know, she's stepped out of the limelight for quite a while. But
Hey, no shame in that. And I'll say the limelight and the everything else, especially after Psycho or Shining. I feel like Shining probably had quite a bit of heat on it, especially just it being so popular. But obviously, Shelley Duvall had her birthday in a couple days, so the day after this is released on the 7th. So I just looked her up on IMDb, and she is still alive. So that's my bad.
There you go.
Didn't mean to give anybody a heart attack. So, and then we also have on July 8th, which is Saturday, 1958, Kevin Bacon from Friday the 13th, and of course other movies such as Footloose and Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special, where he is kidnapped by the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, and of course, what he was in like Hollow Man and some of those kind of movies.
Right.
But he's done quite a few things, and there's I've heard rumblings here recently that Robert Englund has said, hey, if someone else is going to take over and do Freddy for a few movies, that Kevin Bacon would be wonderful at it. And Kevin Bacon's like, hey, I'd listen to it. Let's and so I thought, man, what a cool concept that would be to see Kevin Bacon doing Freddy Krueger.
I think that'd be good. I think Kevin Bacon's a pretty he's a pretty versatile actor. I feel like he could probably step into that role and do it. So, hey, if somebody wants to set that up, I'm all for it. All right. And then on July 10th, 1926, we have Fred Gwynn from, from the Munsters. He's Herman Munster. And then, of course, Pet Sematary. Was he the old man in Pet Sematary, the doctor?
Mm-hmm. Yep, he was.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm picking up what you're putting down, so I know who Fred Gwynn is. Fred Gwynn is obviously amazing. He was great in Pet Sematary. I don't think I've really seen much of the original Munsters, so I can't really speak to that part. But absolutely, Pet Sematary, he was fantastic. I quite liked his performance in that. So
Yep.
I'm sure he is probably deceased. Given the year he was born. But
yeah, definitely.
But I'm sure you have probably good memories of him. I know you were a Munsters kid.
Yeah. I always liked him, and even even people that never haven't watched any of the Munsters, whatever, still know, right? Still typically can picture Herman Munster, and that's him. So so it's
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an iconic role to have played.
Absolutely. That's one of those roles that kind of you never live down. So I definitely could see that. All right. So we have our birthdays. Now it's time for a couple of anniversaries. Nothing too crazy this week. Just a couple of. I for sure like both of these movies, but I could definitely see somebody not liking either of them.
Mm-hmm.
July 8th, 1988, we have Phantasm 2. I think we talked about it. I really quite like Phantasm, and Phantasm 2 is pretty good. 3 and beyond are a little, but Phantasm 2 was one of those movies that when I watched it, I was definitely like, what exactly am I watching? But it's all right. I'm not gonna complain too much about it. What do you think about Phantasm 2, Dave?
It's okay. It's not one of my favorite movies in the world, but it's okay. The Phantasm alone, the franchise is pretty iconic, and some iconic visuals there. But yeah, I don't know. I like the first one. The second one's okay, but it's still not quite on the same level, I don't think.
No, not at all. I would agree with that. And then July 12th, 2002, we have Halloween Resurrection, which is one of my guilty pleasure favorite Halloween movies. Literally Halloween Resurrection. I was I don't know how old I was, 7 or 8 when that movie came out. But Halloween Resurrection has some of the best lines in it. It has fucking Busta Rhymes in it. Come on, man. I think my favorite line in that movie is after Michael Myers had gotten burnt in the building. He was stretchered out. They thought he was dead, and Busta Rhymes looks at him and he says, "You're looking a little crispy there, Mikey." And oh holy shit, that is just an iconic line in a horror movie, and I fucking love it. One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's okay. But it's a little much on the Busta Rhymes being damn so strong in it, but yeah, it's all right. The concept of it is fairly clever, doing the reality show in the home and all that. So it's a unique approach, at least.
Yeah, Absolutely, absolutely. I'd like to see something that somebody else like, kind of in that same genre. I feel like that's kind of an underutilized trope, is like, it being like a webcam show or something like that. I feel like that'd be
Mhm.
cool. I feel like you could do more with that. Maybe not Halloween specifically, but like a paranormal movie. I feel like you could do something with that.
Yeah, I mean,
But
ghost hunting shows are pretty big right now, so you could, do something like, someone trying to do a paranormal investigation somewhere and getting caught up in some trouble.
oh yeah, hey, maybe we need to write a movie. All right.
I mean,
Oh
I
Lord.
guess that's Dead Space, but pretty much, but sort of in a way. Well, he's not really paranormal. He was more of a what do you call it? A whatever you want to call it, like a prank guy, or
Like
not
a
a prank,
yeah,
but
like a vlogger type thing.
a challenge guy that took stupid human trick type deals and ran with them.
Thinking of it, I think they already did something like that, because there's a movie called Ghost Encounters, which is
Oh yeah,
about like a ghost hunting crew who goes to
yeah,
like an asylum, but it turns out to be real. So I guess that may have already been a used idea. So that just popped in my brain. So sorry if anybody out there was getting ready to write that script. Just keep that in mind. They have done this before.
what
Oh
haven't they
Lord.
done though?
Exactly. There's no such thing as an original idea. Uh, oh, good lord. So we do have a couple of upcoming releases. I'm actually interested in both of these. We'll talk about this first one. It's We Might Hurt Each Other. It's debuting on the 11th. It is a Screambox debut, and it is Lithuania's first slasher, pays tribute to the golden age of the subgenre while infusing an influence from Eastern European folklore. First and foremost, I've never seen a Lithuanian film, I don't think. So that in and of itself is pretty cool. If this is indeed its first slasher ever, I think that's pretty iconic, pretty monumental to some. So I will definitely be watching this. I'm going to assume that it's going to be a foreign language film, so subtitles. So yeah, I'll be checking this out. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, you admit slasher. If
Yeah.
it says slasher, I'll try it. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care about anything. Everything else is just window treatment. If it's a slasher, I'll watch it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Slasher, you got me. But cool, and of course, a Screambox. I mean, how can you say no to a Screambox movie? But awesome. And then a little more on the mainstream side, we have Insidious: The Red Door, debuting July the 7th, the Friday after this is released. It is going to be in theaters. We are actually reviewing this next episode, since this is our sort of our Insidious franchise review. And then next week we'll of course watch the newest Insidious movie and maybe give it its own place in the ranking. I hope it's good, but it is described as the Lamberts must go deeper into the further than ever before to put their demons to rest once and for all. Dave and I really haven't talked about it, so I don't know how he feels about the rest of the Insidious movies. Or if he's seen them before, if this is his first viewing, I'm not sure. But I love the Insidious movies. My wife loves the Insidious movies, so I'm super excited for the Red Door. Um, are you excited for it, Dave?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I've seen the Insidious movies before, and I rewatched them then obviously for today. Um, and yeah, I enjoy all four, but I more enjoy the Lambert the Lambert storyline of the Lambert
Yeah.
family. It's just to me it's much more interesting, much stronger. I don't know if it's because it was the first and it just stuck with me more. I like Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, so I don't know if it's that. Lots of things um, probably play into it. So I'm very much excited that we're going back to a third installment of that part of the story. And just from the trailer alone, man, that part where he's in the uh, MRI machine or whatever, the power go.
Yes.
Oh Lord, have mercy. That I can't do MRIs like that anyway. I have to do an open MRI and I have to be sedated and all this other stuff. I can't do it anyway, and that right there sealed the deal that yeah, you're never going to get me to try again. So
I don't think I've ever had an MRI. Not that I want to have an MRI, nor am I looking forward to it. Not only is it kind of spooky, it's also fucking expensive as shit. Like, oh my god. Um,
yeah.
but
I can't do the closed places, the closed space. I just can't do that.
have you ever seen The Descent? Speaking of closed places, have you ever seen the movie The Descent?
Yes, yeah, I can't do that either.
Oh my god. I I normally don't get like physically bothered by movies, but and this is obviously way off topic, but that's just how we do things. The Descent, there's a scene where they're in they're cave crawling, basically trying to get through this cave. And there's a part where this woman gets stuck, and like
Mhm.
I remember watching that, and like my chest started getting real tight, and I was like, "Holy shit, what is going on?" Like I'm starting to have a hard time breathing watching them trying
Yep.
to squeeze this cave. I'm like, "Oh my god!" So I
Anything that has someone crawling through like a tight cavern, a tight tunnel, like air conditioning duct, or just any kind of tight spot, I my blood pressure goes through the roof. I can't. I have a lot of claustrophobia. I can't help it. It just drives me nuts. I don't like the tight spot. Buried alive is the worst. Anything where it's there's a buried that to me that will haunt me for days. If just a moment of seeing someone that's been buried alive, oh, I can't. I can't. I mean, I would literally, if I were ever buried alive and I knew that was it and I no way out, I would have to just bash my brains in against that roof just to make it done because I would go berserk.
Good Lord, man, we need to make a movie. You do need to write a horror movie. I feel like we can make
Oh,
like a legitimate, like terrifying, like horror short about that, where like somebody like descends into madness and just like bangs their head against it. I feel like that'd be like a really traumatizing horror movie to make. Good
like in
Lord, but yeah,
some of the old grave sites where they put the
the
bell.
bells.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, I can't remember what movie that was where they where I got what was I have no idea, but where like someone
Was it the
was there.
Nun?
Yeah, maybe it was. And the bells started ringing. It's like, ooh, that's chilling.
Oh Lord. So now that we've expressed our very very scared of like tight places. Like I'm not super claustrophobic, but like you get me in a tight spot or like something like a buried alive or crawling through caves and shit. Yeah, that gets my heart rate going. But um, in any case, before me and Dave both like have like a mutual stroke because we're talking about being in tight spaces here. Uh, if you haven't already, follow us on social media. I like to always mention it right here because all of these news, all these birthdays, all these anniversaries, we always post about them. We like to talk about them, start a discussion, let us know if you like them, all that good jazz. But when we come back, we are going to do a full review of the franchise of the Insidious movies, and we're also going to give you our official ranking here at the podcast here. So stick around.
Listen to Their Screams is now a Fangoria collaborator. Get 20% off your order at shop.fangoria.com by using the promo code LISTEN2SCREAMS at checkout. That is listen, the number 2, and screams. Or you can click the link in the show notes. All right, and we're back here on Listen to Their Screams, and it is time to discuss the Insidious movies. This is our franchise review and ranking. We're going to discuss each of the 4 movies and count them down from 4 to 1, and our consensus favorites. And this is again, there's not as many movies in this franchise as what have been in the others that we have done. But for the first time of these 4 movies, we had identical rankings. There was no discussion, no give and take. It was spot on. And I think there will probably be lots of people that would probably agree with these rankings. And again, like I said earlier, though, I like all 4 of them. I enjoy all 4 of
Yeah.
them. But it's pretty cut and dry with me on my what I like the most of the 4, etc. So as we dive into it, let's talk about instead of talking about the actors and actresses in each movie. Let's just talk about the key components of these movies. There's Patrick Wilson, who plays Josh Lambert, Rose Byrne, who plays Renee Lambert, Ty Simpkins, plays Dalton Lambert, Lynn Shay plays Elise Rainier, Lee Wannell plays Specs, and Angus Sampson plays Tucker. Now those 5 there are or 6, I believe. That's 6. Excuse me. Those 6 they're not well. Elise, Specs, and Tucker, I believe, are in all 4 movies.
Yeah.
The Lamberts are not. They are in 2 of the 4, but those are your primary components. Now, there's lots of other people, lots of really good people in these, otherwise in these movies, but we're not going to go through everybody that's in each movie. But those are your primary roles and components and actors for the series. So let's count them down here, Ike. We will alternate. I will start 4, and then you take the next one off, and we will go through from 4 to 1 and tell our favorites. So are you ready to roll with this?
Ready to rock and roll.
All right. So coming in for us in our ranking of the Insidious movies at number 4 is Insidious Chapter 3. This was a prequel set before the haunting of the Lambert family, that is in the first 2 movies, that reveals how gifted psychic Elise Rainier reluctantly agrees to use her ability to contact the dead in order to help a teenage girl who has been targeted by a dangerous supernatural entity. It was released on June 5th, 2015. It was written and directed by Lee Wannell, who played Specs in these movies. It had a budget of $11 million. It grossed $113 million, which was good for the 55th highest grossing movie of 2015. Now, when you watch the series, if you've never watched it before, when you watch the first 2, and if you're pretty invested, you get to the third, you're kind of like, what the hell? It's because it's different, right? You have the same psychic, but lots of franchises have done this where they go back, before and do that prequel thing that kind of helps lead you up to it. And they've really centered on Elise, the psychic, pretty much for the whole series. She's kind of the centerpiece, that the backbone that flows through it all.
Right.
And so I think, again, for me, Chapter 3, it's a pretty good movie. It's well done. It's not that it's a bad movie, but I think, at least in my opinion, coming out of 1 and 2, where you're invested in the Lambert story, and you get to this, it's kind of like what the hell? You feel, I was very invested in the characters, and I think that's kind of, it gave it, I don't know, I believe it put it at a disadvantage for me, coming into the Chapter 3 of, I'm just not as invested in this as I probably would have been had this chronologically maybe it come out first, or been something else, separate in its entirety. Because I do like the movie. I did enjoy the movie. But as far as these 4 go, it's just I didn't feel as invested as I did, with any of the other 4. Even like we said, it's kind of broken to a 2 and 2 thing as far as stories go. And so what do you take away from Chapter 3 in your overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So Insidious Chapter 3, like you mentioned, this is essentially like, if you were to put this in chronological order, Insidious Chapter 3 is realistically the first chapter. This is Elise before she meets Specs and Tucker. And throughout this film, she meets Specs and Tucker, and they kind of become a team. So that's the first thing, is that this is the first film that like kind of introduces those characters, right? Like as like their introduction origin, if you will. Because the rest of the movies, Specs and Tucker are just there. So Elise sort of has a bit of an origin story here. Talks about her dead husband and everything else. And Insidious Chapter 3 is by no means a bad movie. In fact, I would say none of these movies are bad movies. This is just like the least good, if you will. And Dave is 100% spot on, is that I don't think that when they made these movies originally with the original 2 Insidious movies, I don't really think that they anticipated or projected there to be more movies. And I think that obviously there's no way that they could have, right? I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but Lee Wannell,
I think it's
something like that.
but yeah.
Wannell. So Lee
Yeah.
Wannell. So I don't think that he anticipated making more than the first 2 movies, but I think the first 2 movies got such critical success and acclaim that he kind of put himself into a position where he's like, okay, I need to make some more movies. Let's see what we can do. So I think that these were definitely afterthought movies, this one and the 4th movie. Not to say that they're bad movies. They're just more expanding on sort of the story of Elise, whereas the other Insidious movies are very much focusing and honing in on the Lambert family. With that being said, Insidious Chapter 3 is a very, very good origin story. It has a very interesting approach to the sort of classic possession type movie, right? They talk a lot about the further, right? And not spirit walking. What is it? Astral projection, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's not your typical like you just get possessed kind of movie. There's this thing called astral projection, and demons aren't even necessarily demons. They're like human spirits, but they're just evil. So it's definitely sort of a twist on sort of that traditional like demon possession type movie where it's not exactly the same, right? It's not as biblical, if you will. Honestly, this is like demon possession without the Bible, if I'm going to be honest, because at least to my knowledge, they don't really use sort of any of those traditional tricks that the
No.
priests use. May the power of Christ compel you. It's literally nothing like that. This is almost like the agnostic version of like possession movies, which is sort of a weird realization I just had. But nonetheless, it's creative, it's interesting, and this definitely lays really good groundwork. But it almost seemed unnecessary because the first two movies already did that.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
good movie nonetheless.
Yeah. It feels the way they approach things feels much more like Stranger Things, right? Like there's realms, and because and again I don't know if it's in the chapter 3 or in the last key where at least says something of well when you're able there's certain people that are in tune to this and can cross over, and
Yeah.
when you do and you call out, all the dead can hear you, right? So you get lots of things, right? So it's like there's this realm where the dead are, and some of the dead are they're demons, right? Some of the dead, they're evil, and they can latch on to people, right, and be connected to people, and they can be there, but only certain people can see them, or only certain devices can see them, and can communicate with them, but they can do things, right, and they can make people evil and make people do things and possess them or whatever. But it's yeah, it's not quite as like you said, it's not biblical, and it's not quite as fire and brimstone as what it is often made out in other movies. It's much more. It's a much stealthier thing, right? It's where it's almost like this stuff's there, and most people don't even notice it, but it could still be there, right? I mean, literally, there could be a spirit, you know, behind you at all times, virtually, and you could never know, right? I mean, there's lots of that in there. Um, but then then sometimes though things happen, and and you see where you get things that are like haunting, your typical haunting type things, right? Things moving, things happening, stuff like that. um and again, it's fairly clever. I don't know if that it is overtly original, but it's a little different than what the majority of these kind of movies are. But like you said, it is kind of, it's not really laying a lot of original groundwork from the first two movies, but it is kind of expanding on it a little bit, adding some depth there. Um, and while it is an enjoyable movie, like I said, it's of the four, to me, it's got the least to offer. But it's still a good movie. So let's move on, Ike. Let's go ahead and move on to our number 3. So lay that on us.
Yep, absolutely. Numero tres, we have Insidious: The Last Key. Parapsychologist Dr. Elise Rainier faces her most fearsome and personal haunting yet, as she is drawn back to her ghostly childhood home where the terror began. Released January 5th, 2018, written by Lee Wanell and directed by Adam Robitel. It had a budget of $10 million and grossing $167.9 million. 47th highest grossing movie of 2018. Now, while this is our third movie, The Last Key is a incredibly good movie. And in my opinion, this one lays more original groundwork than the third movie. And dare I say, even perhaps the second movie. This movie really gives you the true origin of Elise. Takes you back to her literal childhood when she first started kind of experiencing the supernatural. And she's talking about different things that happened in her childhood. She has to go back to her childhood home because she's being called there. There's a very interesting subplot where this guy is kidnapping women, and there's even more interesting subplot that her dad was kidnapping women, and that they were both doing it at the bequest of the resident evil spirit demon thing. So this movie, in my opinion, is very good. Again, none of these are bad. It's just which ones are less good than the others. This one again is the fourth of the three movies. So in release order, this is the most recent one that came out, obviously, other than the one that's coming out in a couple days. Uh, but this one definitely, it's again a prequel to the first two movies. And if you've never seen the first two movies, we'll talk about why these are both prequels here in just a second. Uh, but Last Key is very good. It has a lot of really cool scenes. One of the creepiest scenes in that whole movie that they show happen multiple times is the demon. Its fingers are keys that they can use to shut off your vocal cords. And one of the creepiest things in the movie, in the series in general, is a scene where the demon uses the key, inserts it into their neck, and twists, and there's like a click, and then they can't scream anymore. Um, Super cool, creative concept, very creepy, and a little disgusting if you ask me. Uh, but nonetheless, a good movie. What did you think, Dave, about The Last Key?
Yeah, I think as far as gaps between movies, I think between the last key and chapter 3 is the biggest gap for me in I'm not quality, in enjoyable, the enjoyableness. The last key really makes chapter 3 just really non needed, right? You could not have chapter 3 anymore and you'd be fine, right? It would make perfect sense as is. The only thing really, chapter 3 adds origin wise is that, is her, meeting Specs and Tucker and all that. But really, this is much more impactful as far as Elisa's origin, with her dad and her mom and everything, and her brother and the brother who wouldn't have anything to do with her for years because he didn't believe and thought she was just more or less thought she was just terrorizing him, right? And thought it was horrible. And then, she meets her nieces that she had never met and all this. And this movie is just, it's so much more emotional and there's so much more to it. And it to me feels more like an Insidious movie than chapter 3 does. Again, chapter 3 is not a bad movie, but this movie to me it's stronger. It is, you feel more invested. Chapter 3 feels like you took Elise, which was a supporting character, and tried to make her the main character, and it didn't quite work. There wasn't quite enough there really where you felt she was strong enough. This one, it worked, right? She felt much more like a character that could lead the movie and carry the movie. And
Yeah.
and it was just this was a fun movie, right? And then you almost don't expect it, right? If you're watching through and like us, you watch chapter 3 and like, oh, that was okay, but it's not as good as, the Lambert thing. And so, and you see, oh, this is more of it. You're like, oh, I don't know. But this really, it bridges the two much, and that's, I think, the purpose of it, right? It bridges the Elise story and the Lambert story and get you there. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't this movie end with her receiving the call to go see Josh Lambert?
It
And
sure does.
she says something about, tell Josh I'll be right there, right at the end of the movie. I believe, right?
Yep. At the end, I believe it's the mom,
Yeah,
Josh's mom.
yeah,
I can't remember what the actress's name is, unfortunately, or her name in the show. But she does call Elise, and I believe Elise has like a vision, and I think it's like the face of the red-faced demon, if I remember correctly.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, this movie does a very good job of bridging and getting us from the Elise story to the Lambert thing, the story and the Dalton thing and everything. And yeah, I enjoyed this movie much more than chapter 3.
Right.
Um, so again, I feel like the jump from 3 to Last Key was a pretty good jump. It was, a big step up. While 3 left me longing for there to be more to it, this one really felt more satisfying overall as a movie. And again, to me, it felt more like an Insidious movie than chapter 3 did.
Yep. Absolutely. I would have to agree. 100%.
All right, so that brings us then to our number 2, and people that are playing along at home probably have an idea where this is going. Number 2 would be Insidious chapter 2.
Freudian slip.
That's something else. It says the Lamberts believe that they have defeated the spirits that have haunted their family, but they soon discover that evil is not beaten so easily. It was released September 13th, 2013, written by James Wan and Lee Wannell, directed by James Wan, a budget of $5 million, grossed $161.9 million for the 42nd highest grossing movie of 2013. Now, if you'll see, all these movies are right, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, right? Which is, hey, that's nothing to shake anything at. That's all right. But what I marvel at is if you look at the percentage that they grow. I mean, this movie was made on $5 million and then grossed $161 million.
Yeah.
All these movies are made for next to nothing, and we haven't even. Insidious was the cheapest one yet to make. I mean, the profit margin is just unreal with these, and pretty spectacular. And I would venture to guess that's the reason why. Hey, they're like, hey, let's make some more, and come up with something. And that's why we got Chapter 3 in the last key, and why we're getting the Red Door. It's like these things are still making money, lots of money. So go at it. But Chapter 2, like you said earlier, kind of, feels like it was maybe intended to, in their eyes, maybe wrap up the Lambert haunting and bring it to a close, which we know is not true now that we have the Red Door coming out this week. Now there's more to that story, but the best thing about this movie is, man, there's so many. I love when movies cleverly and in a great way can intertwine itself with what it's done before, and there's all these nods back to the first movie and noises they heard where they didn't really fully explain what it was. It just kind of leads you to believe that maybe it's just a demon or something making noises, and you find out, nope, it's not. It's right. It's Josh Lambert, or it's the kid, or something in this other world, in the what is it, the Further?
Yes,
it's
the Further.
Yeah, like there's that part in the first movie, which I know we haven't got there yet, but there's this big thump, and he's like, "What the hell was that?" And, they hop up. It's pretty early in the movie, I believe. And then you come to find out here in Chapter 2 that it's Josh pounding on the front door from the Further. So it's very cool. I love when they do that, and you feel that they planted a seed there that had future intentions, to blossom, and they get to do that, and it works out. It's, I don't know, there's something, it makes the story feel much richer and much more full when you can see that there's things simultaneously happening that we didn't know of at first, but now it is, and it makes it feel more like a franchise and more like a larger story than just individual movies, and I like that when it's done right. So, and I think, to me, Chapter 2 is, from what I've always felt when I watch it, it picks right up after the first one, and pretty much rolls right into it, and it really feels like hey, this is Act 2, right? This is just, we're continuing right on. It felt like they had a pretty good idea where they were going with it, maybe from the get-go, and not that they just, we need to make a sequel, so let's cobble something together. It felt like they had a big picture in mind, and it works. It flows well, and it's one of those, I speak of it all the time. There's movies that I feel like you need to watch right together. You don't watch one without the other, and I feel like Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2 are just 1-2 punches that you just really need to watch together to tell that big story, and it's very enjoyable.
Yep, absolutely. I would definitely have to agree. 1 and 2, in my opinion, exist as sort of the same movie. Basically, you would be lost, in my opinion. You would be losing out on the experience if you did not watch these movies either simultaneously or close to one another. You can't watch the first one without the second one. Very much in the same sense that you can't watch Halloween 1 without Halloween 2 in a lot of ways. There's an obvious pickup and a drop-off point for those movies. Now, Insidious Chapter 2, we kind of mentioned it. They believe they defeated the spirits. I'm not sure if, Dave, you said this already. But the reason why I mentioned Elise in the previous conversation is that she dies prior to this movie. Now, this was very much a surprising twist, but they still managed to keep her in this film, just like they're still keeping her in the next film. I don't know how deep her connections will be with the Red Door, but at least in Insidious Chapter 2, she does still have a pretty significant role to play, and it's a very prominent role that she does play. And like Dave said, this movie basically lays out a lot of groundwork and a lot of very interesting little pieces of information that you didn't realize were happening at the same time that it was happening in Insidious Chapter 1. So I think one of the best things about these two movies is that there's so much that they did in the first one that it very much feels like the second movie was intentional. And when a second movie or a sequel is intentional, I feel like you have a lot more quality out of it. Whereas a lot of times with these movies, a lot of sequels are not intentional. A lot of sequels are not planned. And I think that's probably one of the drawbacks of Insidious: The Last Key and Insidious Chapter 3 is that they felt like they weren't planned. So I do hope that Insidious, The Red Door, feels planned, because Insidious Chapter 2 does leave you on sort of a little bit of a cliffhanger. Elise in her spirit form is still communicating with Specs and what's the other guy? Tucker. So
Yeah.
she's still kind of communicating with them, giving them leads. And they show up at someone's house. Elise goes in to try and talk to somebody who is in a wheelchair, who I would assume is astral projecting, which is why they are basically like comatose. And she sees something that scares her.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to do anything with that in the next movie that we're about to watch, or if that's just completely like out the window, go fuck yourself. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think that could be a very promising starting point for maybe another movie that they might make at some point. I know that there is another movie being made that is not The Red Door. I already don't remember what it's called. I'll try and find that here in a second. But basically, Insidious Chapter 2, in my opinion, definitely, you could have very easily not picked up the Lambert storyline and just left it there. But at the same time, I mean, I think it wouldn't hurt as long as they do it right. So that's kind of my positive and a negative about this movie, is that it's really good, closes it off with a nice, neat little bow, but they're kind of reopening that package a little bit, and I'm very curious to see how they're going to do that.
Yeah. To be frank, honestly, if you take Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2 independent of each other, I honestly probably, if you try to not think of the other with it, I probably enjoy Chapter 2 a little more. But since we're discussing it as a franchise and the effect on each other, Insidious Chapter 2 to me makes Insidious, the first one, a much better movie for what it does. It just adds to that movie for me. It really brings more to my appreciation and my love of that first one. Well, I like the first one. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But the second one, to me, it adds a whole nother layer to it too. That makes me say, wow, that it's really, really good then. Even better than what I thought when you watch it before watching Chapter 2. It just adds a whole new coat of paint to it. That it's pretty wild. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that means that we are down to our numero uno, which, like Dave likes to say, if you're keeping track at home, folks, if you're playing along with us, I already know where we're going with this. So, without further ado, our number one is Insidious Chapter 1. It's not called Insidious Chapter 1, but just for the case of numbering, it is the first chapter. Basically, Insidious is a family who looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in the realm called the Further. This movie was released April 1st, 2011, so it is over 12 years old. It is written by Lee Whannell and directed by, of course, the one and only James Wan. It had a budget of $1.5 million, and it grossed $100.1 million, the 61st highest grossing movie of 2011. Insidious Chapter 1, for all intents and purposes, is probably one of the best original films in terms of a horror film of all time. I think that Insidious is a criminally underrated movie. I think a lot of people, they hear a lot of the hype around this movie, and they immediately just think that I'm not going to watch it. But this is, I would say, a very criminally underrated movie. If you've never seen it, it is fantastic. I think that a lot of people don't appreciate the Insidious movie for what it really gave us. And this is one of those exception movies where it's a PG-13 movie that is extraordinary. They rely heavily on that audio cue and the music perspective to give you sort of that horror feeling. It has ruined the song by Tiny Tim, the Tiptoe through the tulips.
Yeah.
Completely ruined that song. Anytime I hear that, it's used in SpongeBob. There's an episode that uses it in SpongeBob, but
Yeah.
that's from like 2003 or something like that. And I remember not too long ago, my wife was watching SpongeBob, and I heard that song, and like it made it makes the hairs on your neck stand up, and you're like, oh shit, you know. But this movie, it is extraordinary. It is from start to finish. There is not a dull moment. This movie creates a world. It creates a universe. It makes you very invested with these characters. It very much starts out where it needs to start out, and it is a very, I would say, steep incremental climb to the ultimate climax of the film, and it leaves you hanging on another cliffhanger. And of course, obviously, we get to watch these in quick succession now, but there was over 2 year gap between these movies. So I can only imagine how people were feeling after the end of the first one, waiting for the second one. So absolutely fantastic movie. I love it. I rewatch it every year. It's just on my list. But Dave, what did you think about the first Insidious movie?
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's definitely one of the modern horror classics, right? Is definitely, as far as modern horror goes, one of the best out there. You know, I think, at least in my mind, I think people that even aren't real huge on the paranormal type movies and the possession type movies, I think if they gave it a chance, they would like it, because like we said earlier, it doesn't approach it the same way, right? There's not the priests and crosses and holy water type approach that most other movies take. It's different, and the cast is just loaded, right? These such talented people in this movie that, I mean, they're good in everything they do, and it's just, I mean, right from the get go, you just feel like this is a family. I mean, it clicks right from the start, and you start understanding these characters even before the shit starts happening. You understand them, and you feel that you know them, and that makes you invested. And when people can play and write relatable characters that you can sink your teeth into right from the get go, and you feel like they don't feel fake, right? They don't feel hokey. They feel like real people, and you get them. Then when the gist of the movie starts happening, then you really you're ready. You're primed and set up for it, right? Because when stuff starts happening to these people, you're like, oh shit, right? Whether you hate them or whether you like them, you feel. And this movie does that, even before you get there. And I mean, there's some jumps in it that always get me. Um, there's creepiness. There's just that area. And when you start thinking about, man, hey, what do we know, right? Do we? What hell is this? These, could there be spirits and demons and things lurking around, and just, right out of eye shot at the corner of your eye, right, your peripheral vision, it's so creepy to think. And this movie, I know you're taking a very quote unquote preposterous concept, right, this of demons and possession or whatever else, and you make it feel potentially real, and potentially believable with how they approach it, right? There's not, there's nothing, there's not, you're not utilizing any religious pretenses that a person may have
Right.
coming into it or anything like that. It's just, it feels every day, right? It feels something relatable to all of us, right? We all get up and eat breakfast and go to work and do these things that these people are doing. And then suddenly when, stuff starts happening, and, it's, you have to think, how would you react, right? And, when Rose Byrne's character, she thinks it's the house, and she just thinks it's a haunting type thing, and she wants to get away from it, and they do, and it still is occurring, and things are still happening, and it's not tied to a place, it's tied to the people, and it's just really wild. And it, like I said though, it pulls at your emotions, and it makes you invested, and makes you feel for these people, and makes you, even relatable to them on some level, and it's really well done, really beautifully shot. The sound is exceptional. The acting's exceptional. It feels timeless, right? It's doesn't have that period piece feel to it of any way. It doesn't
Right.
rely on anything tied to a particular time period or anything like that. And it is a great movie. It is to me a modern horror classic that I think people should definitely be open to seeing, even if supernatural and possession type movies are not necessarily your thing. I think this has an approach to it that makes it has a little more general appeal for people. I think that
Yeah.
that would like it because of any pretenses people might have for those type of movies. I don't think these fall into some of those same traps that would cause someone to not like it. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Absolutely.
but again, once you've seen them and seen them all for a time or two, it's very hard for me to separate the one and chapter two anymore. They just feel, again, like we said earlier, they just feel like they go together, and like it's not even like it's two separate movies anymore. They just feel like they're one big movie that need to be watched together. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Before we move on, I did want to just briefly mention. I looked up because there is another movie coming out at some point. There's no release date, but it's called Thread, and it's titled An Insidious Tale. Um, so that very well could be sort of like it's a spinoff of the mainline series. So that very well could be the story that started at the end of two. But apparently, they have Kumail Nanjiani and Mandy Moore. Both are basically brought into it. But also, there was talks in 2018 of a crossover film between the Insidious and Sinister movies that was in development. And
interesting.
he basically there was a guy, Jason Bloom from Bloomhouse. Basically, he was talking about how there was a tentative working title in Sinister, but apparently it got put on delay. But he states that he believes that there is potential for re-entering development in the future. Basically, he basically said he wants to cross those worlds. The Bloomhouse Productions is in charge of both series, so it would not be outside the realm of possibility. So I think that would be cool. That's a little fun factoid for people for potential future.
Yeah, I mean they've opened up a universe here where there's lots of things they could do,
Right.
different ways they can go, different directions they could go, different stories they could tell, and it all kind of be loosely tied together, and within the same universe, and so yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Again, they're making money. I can't imagine while they're still having that kind of a profit margin, that they won't continue to do something with it. It may not be with Patrick Wilson and all them, but something to be done. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that wraps up our franchise discussion and ranking of the Insidious movies. And so now we are primed and ready for this weekend to go see Insidious Red Door. And we will be discussing and rating and reviewing that movie on our next episode. So if you enjoyed that and you're going to go see that movie, you're welcome. We've got you ready now. We've caught you up. We've piqued your interest, and hopefully we've helped stoke your excitement, and everybody will turn out and go see Insidious Red Door. That's a surefire way to hopefully that we'll get further movies in the Insidious verse. Is that if it does big numbers, then they're going to make more. So, but that's what we're rating and reviewing next week, Insidious Red Door. But Ike, before we close out the Insidious franchise episode, anything you want to throw in there?
Like Dave said, go check out this movie if you like Insidious. Contributing to the expansion of the Insidious universe. I want to see a Sinister crossover. So if we have a good turnout with this Red Door movie, I think it'll only increase our chances at seeing a crossover or more content. So yeah, absolutely support them. Let's go out. Let's see how it is. I have my hopes managed, but I am expecting something good out of this movie. So we will see, is what I will say.
Yes, we will see, and we will talk about that next week and see if our expectations were met or not. So we'll discuss that next episode. But until then, thank you for supporting us. Make sure you rate and review us on whatever platform you choose to listen to us, and make sure you subscribe. Follow us on all of our social media links. But until next week, when we're going to discuss Insidious the Red Door, wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and have many pleasant nightmares.